Hi guys, welcome to Palante. Today we're going to talk about how to tackle college essays. So to start off, just to put it out there, essays are for basically the admissions committee to get to know you. Let me repeat that, to get to know you. Not your grandma, not your mom, not your dad. These essays have to really represent you. And I say this because, for example, if you're going to write an essay that talks about, the person that you admire the most, and you go on and on and on about how wonderful your grandma or mom or dad are or is, then you're really not showing yourself on the page. You're showing your mom or your grandma or the person you're talking about, but not you. And so the reason why colleges ask for essays is because they want to know who you are and, sort of like what you stand for, what you believe in, all those type of things. So that's the first thing. That's my first piece of advice. Make sure the essay represents you. Next up, this is something that, depends on the person, but I would recommend start early. These things take time. This is not going to be, a thing where you're just going to sit down and finish it. Maybe it works for really, really incredible people, but for most people, that does not work out. It is okay to make mistakes. It is okay to have many, many drafts. That is all okay. But in order to be able to have many, many drafts and, kind of improve and improve and improve, you have to start early and you have to have enough time to, really think about what you want to write and what you want to convey. Which brings me to the next tip. I would also recommend that you sit down with your parents and, let them tell you stories of when you were younger or just, hardships that maybe you don't remember but are there. So a lot of the essays that you're going to write sometimes are extremely personal. I know mine was. And so, sitting down with your parents really allows you to see sort of everything and the bigger picture. Growing up, maybe there are things that you don't notice, that you notice a little bit, but you really don't know why. And now that you're older, I think it's the perfect time to sort of look back on those times and be okay, well, this is what was really going on. And this is how this affected me. And this is how that affected how I am today. And so, colleges really want to know how the story or how what you're writing about affects you and how that shapes you and all those things. So I would really, really recommend, to first off, write down the story that you want to tell. And then, once you write down sort of, in very simple words, be okay, I want to talk about when my dog died, for example. So what is the reason that you want to talk about this? Is it because you loved your dog so much, or is it because it shows some sort of side of you that nothing else does? So why do you want to write about this? And then sort of what effect did that event have on your person today? How did that shape you into the person you are? And then finally, how is this relatable to you going to college? So sort of there has to be this really, really big circle and just a big connection. And ultimately the star of the show is you. Yes, your story is very important. And, through the story, you convey who you are and how you got to where you are. But the important thing is that, these admissions officers get to know you. And I cannot emphasize that enough because it really, really, really is extremely important. With that, I would also recommend, like I said, take your time. There's plenty of time if you start early. These are very important. They're essentially the best way that admissions officers get to know you. And so make sure that this really represents you. And lastly, I would also recommend to have, people read it. So something that may make sense to you might not make sense to somebody else. And, again, if you start early, there's going to be enough time to have many people read this and just sort of hear what would make your essay better and, what other people think of it. And if it truly conveys, something that represents you or shows another side of yourself. With that, that's sort of kind of help for specific essays. Which brings me to my last point. You're obviously going to write several essays. And so I would recommend that you don't, so for example, if you do an essay about how much you admire your mom, and then your next essay is also, it's a different topic, but you also talk about your mom, you're kind of not giving yourself the opportunity to sort of round yourself out. I'm sure your mom is wonderful, but you definitely want to sort of tell a story that shows many facets of yourself. And what I mean by this is, for example, if you're going to talk about a specific story here, and then you talk about something that is essentially the same thing. Well, that isn't really productive. You know, you're not basically taking advantage of that extra essay that you're having to show another side of you, or to show something else you learned, you know, or to show another aspect of yourself. So yeah, those are like my general tips on how to tackle college essays. But yeah, if you guys have any comments, suggestions, any other videos that you'd like to see, make sure you leave them down below. And always remember, move forward y pa'lante. Bye.